What was determined to be done against Gibeah due to their heinous act? This is the question we seek to answer today as we continue our verse-by-verse study of the book of Judges on Walking Through the Bible. Today we're going to be discussing Judges 20 verses 1 to 11. But before we do that, let's read the passage. If you have a Bible with you, you can turn to Judges 20 verse 1. But if you don't have a Bible, don't worry. Just follow along with us on the screen. The version that we'll be reading from is the New King James Version. So Judges chapter 20, beginning at verse 1. So all the children of Israel came out from Dan to Beersheba, as well as from the land of Gilead, and the congregation gathered together as one man before the Lord at Mizpah. And the leaders of all the people, all the tribes of Israel, presented themselves in the assembly of the people of God, 400,000 foot soldiers who drew the sword. Now the children of Benjamin heard that the children of Israel had gone up to Mizpah. Then the children of Israel said, "Tell us, how did this wicked deed happen?" So the Levite, the husband of the woman who was murdered, answered and said, "My concubine and I went to Gibeah, which belongs to Benjamin, to spend the night. And the men of Gibeah rose against me and surrounded the house at night because of me. They intended to kill me, but instead they ravished my concubine so that she died. So I took hold of my concubine, cut her in pieces, and sent her throughout all the territory of the inheritance of Israel, because they committed lewdness and outrage in Israel. Look, all of you are children of Israel. Give your advice and counsel here and now." So all the people arose as one man, saying, "None of us will go to his tent, nor will any turn back to his house. But now this is the thing which we will do to Gibeah. We will go up against it by lot. We will take 10 men out of every 100 throughout all the tribes of Israel, 100 out of every 1,000, 1,000 out of every 10,000, to make provisions for the people, that when they come to Gibeah in Benjamin, they may repay all the vileness that they have done in Israel." So all the men of Israel were gathered against the city, united together as one man. In our last lesson, we looked at the brutal rape and murder of a Levite's concubine by the men of Gibeah and Benjamin. So that we do not have to issue another parental warning, we simply tell our viewers that if you want our deeper discussion of the end of chapter 19, we refer you to our last lesson, which can be found at youtube.com/East End Church of Christ under the Walking Through the Bible English Judges playlist. With those events in the past, Israel has been called together to deal with the matter. Notice here that all of Israel is called from Dan to Beersheba. This could mean that by this time some in the tribe of Dan had moved up into Laish, something we saw in chapter 18, or it could simply mean that that detail was added later by a scribe simply to note that all Israel had gathered together. They gathered at Mizpah within the tribal boundaries of Benjamin. They didn't do this because the crime took place in Benjamin, but because Mizpah was often seen as a central location for all of the tribes to meet, other than at the tabernacle, as we'll see in other studies. That those from the land of Gilead came too shows us that this happened earlier on in Israel's history in Canaan. For as you recall, as the period of the Judges wore on, those on the east side of the Jordan became more detached from the affairs that occurred west of the Jordan. We're told that 400,000 men of war assembled, showing us first that even after the wars in Canaan, Israel's army remained numerous, even if it was smaller than in Joshua, but also in sending so many people, the children of Israel saw this crime as serious. The only tribe missing was the tribe of Benjamin, and the reason for this we'll see later on in the chapter. The first thing that Israel did when assembled is establish the facts. Yes, Israel had received the dismembered parts of the Levite's concubine, but that in and of itself didn't prove anything. They wanted to know what had happened. And so the Levite said that he and his concubine had come to Gibeah for the night, and the men of Gibeah rose up against him and threatened to kill him. Now we didn't get this detail from chapter 19, but based on the events that happened there, we have no reason to conclude that the Levite lied or exaggerated his story here. Instead of killing him, they ravished the concubine, meaning they raped her. And that was the end of the story. It is interesting to note that the Levite left out his cowardice in not protecting his concubine in the first place. This would have made him look bad, and perhaps he thought that if he included this detail, Either he wouldn't receive justice for his concubine, or worse, that he would be punished too. We as humans, when we are overcome with fear or guilt over our actions, often omit details that make us look bad. We're not excusing the Levite here, nor would his admission mean that the men of Gibeah didn't need to be dealt with. But his omission is noteworthy. Was the Levite punished for his cowardice? We're not told, for that's not the point of the story. Needless to say, though, God deals with men and women in his own time, and so if punishment needs to be meted out for sin, and man does not do it, God will deal with the matter when he sees fit. With the facts now before them, Israel decides that they are going to go up against Gibeah and punish them for their sinful deeds. They divide the army up by lot and would also decide who would supply provisions for those who went off to fight. It is said here that Israel was united in their action. But how would the tribe of Benjamin react to this hostile action? We'll find out, the Lord willing, in the next lesson. With that, our time is up for today. The Lord willing, we hope you'll join us for tomorrow's discussion of Judges chapter 20, verses 12 to 25, as we continue our walk through the Bible, one verse at a time. Thank you for watching today's episode. We hope that you found it edifying and ask that you not only subscribe to our channel and podcast, but that you like and share this episode among your friends, so that the saving gospel of Jesus Christ can go out to the whole world.